There is a garden, there is a city, and there's a kingdom of God. And it is beautiful, and he is bringing it right now into our midst. Hey, welcome to week number 5. We've passed the halfway point. So if you're over there in the Life Center, welcome. And if you are viewing through Living Word Online, very warm welcome to all of you who might be out there wherever you are. And I want to remind you to pick up one of these sermon devotionals. Every week we prepare some follow-through steps that are going to help you go a lot deeper in what we talk about today. And if you're out there online, we do have this available as an electronic copy. You just have to search around a little bit there, but you'll be able to find it. I'm going to come back to this in just a moment. Before I do, this week we got a note from a church it's called Living Word Community Church in Diradawa. And many years ago, Pastor Steve Almquist and Melissa Wagu of Ethiopian Outreach Ministry, they had a connection to go up there to that part of Ethiopia and really support and resource a church that they had just a lot of excitement about. And so we have a couple pictures. Let me show you this picture. So this is Pastor Misakur and his wife, and great, wonderful couple. Here's another picture of another pastor on staff. They have a wonderful, wonderful team, one of the best teams I've ever met. And then here is a picture of an event that they just had, and they want us to see what was going on there. So here's what's pretty exciting about the church in Diradawa is they are a Christian minority working in another religiously kind of dominant part of Ethiopia. And they are doing their very best to be light and salt to that part of the community, and it is working. They have some great outreach programs going on. Here's another thing. There is a local university near their church, and they have a very significant next generation ministry to college students. And so they are reaching hundreds of college students. And one of the things that Pastor Misakur does is he does these leadership training events where they invite all these college students in, and they're making a real impact. So here's what all this is about. Every time he sends us these things, he just said, please tell the congregation thank you. And the reason for that, it's your guys' generosity through our Christmas Eve offering and also through our Faith Promise Global Missions that we're able to send resources over that they just simply do not have. And they build their church, and they're building a ministry center, and more influence is taking place. So he wanted to say thank you. I'm saying thank you. And guys, I want to say thank you for your generosity. Thank you so much for making really good and powerful things possible around the world. All right, week number 5, the message is on being and doing, and I'm going to add one more word to that mix in just a moment. Here is a very profound conviction that I have, and it's true for every one of you, and here's what it is. It's the big idea, number 1, and that is God is not even close to being done with your life yet. Oh my word, there's so much more to come. He's not even close to being done with you. Now, I believe that for a whole bunch of reasons, and one of them is John chapter 5, verse 17, where Jesus is talking to a group of religious leaders who are a little irritated with him that he's actually doing good things on the Sabbath day when he's supposed to be resting. Well, Jesus winds up saying, listen, the Father God in heaven, he is always working, and I too am working. And so listen, right now, today, Jesus is at work in your life. He's going to be doing it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and all week long, and next week and next month, he's always at work. Now, many weeks ago, we had another message where we talked about Philippians chapter 1, verse 6, and from the Message translation where Paul is just talking, he is so fully committed. I'm so confident, I'm so certain that God, who has begun doing something really good in you, he is going to keep on working that until he brings it to a flourishing finish. Not only is he working right now, but God's promise is he's going to keep on working, and he's going to be working in such a way to bring you to this amazing end. So that is just this big, beautiful idea that gets me started. Now, what I want to do with that idea today is I want to talk about 3 things. Number 1 is, what does it mean to be a human? What does it mean to be a human being? And then I'm going to just talk about that for a few moments. Then I'm going to spend a little more time talking about what it is to be a human becoming. Now, we don't use that language too much, human becoming, but I think it's a very significant term for you to grab hold of. And so then I'm going to talk about what's in the middle. What's in the middle of being and becoming, and is this word doing. And I'm going to spend the larger part of the message talking about what does it mean for you and I to be these human doings. And again, another little bit of an odd phrase. So let me suggest big idea number 2, and that is, listen, this is not trite. It's not trite. It's true. You are amazing. You are simply amazing. And life around you is beautiful. And life is God's gift to you. And you are a gift to the world around you. I mean, that is what God has done. That's what it means to be human. That's what it means to be alive. That's what it is to be a human being. Amazing, full of life, a gift. There's this old phrase, which I love. Be yourself. Everybody else is taken. Just be yourself. Now, I'm going to talk about becoming yourself, but be yourself. Don't try to be somebody else. I don't know how many years I spent trying to be somebody else. I'd see somebody, I want to be like that person. I try to be that person. I see, let me be like that person. And after a while, it finally dawned on me, God doesn't want me to be somebody else. God wants me to be me. And, be me. At some point, I'll tell you, becoming the best version possible of me. But don't try to be somebody else. Everybody's taken. Just be who you are. You are alive, full of life. To be a human means you think. I could call you a human thinking. You have a mind. To be human means you have emotions. I could call you a human feeling. You're feeling all sorts of things. You dream, you desire, you plan, you have longings, you have goals, you have ambitions, you have values, you have commitments. There are allegiances, all those things. That's just what humans do. And that's what you are doing right now as you are alive. To be human means that there is something inside you, and we don't always have the best word for it, but we call it your character, your sense of morality. There's virtue. I mean, they're the qualities of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, so many more. And virtue is a good word. There's a moral dynamic to what it means to be human. Now, by the way, when we're lacking certain things, we don't use the word virtue. We use the word vice. When we're talking about some of the darkness that is inside of us. I'll come back to that in a moment. And you have a spirit and a soul. There is something eternal about you. You're not meant to come to an end. You're designed to live forever. Your personality is designed to go on forever. And that's what it means to be a human being. It's just simply wonderful. Psalm 139 is this sort of poem of praise to God about being alive. Oh yes, you shaped me first inside and then out. You formed me in my mother's womb. I thank you, high God. This morning they taught us this wonderful new song full of the qualities of God. And here some say, God, you're the high God, you're breathtaking. And then he shifts to himself, body and soul. I am marvelously made. And right back to God, I worship in adoration. What a creation you've made. You know me inside and out. You know every bone in my body. You know exactly how I was made bit by bit, how I was sculpted from nothing into something. A few weeks ago, Pastor Garrett talked about we are God's masterpiece. We are God's work of art. And here the psalmist is saying we are like the sculpture from nothing into something. And then it's like there's an open book. There's a story. God is watching me grow from conception to birth, and all the stages of my life were spread out before you. The days of my life all prepared before I ever lived one. What's going on here is a couple things, but what I want you to understand is your identity is given to you from God, and then your identity is grown by you. So identity is both given and it is grown. Your identity, who you are, it is gift to be received. But it is also a responsibility to be embraced and for you to do something with. That's what it is to be a human being. Now, let me talk about becoming, because you are always in motion. You are always moving someplace. Have you guys remember the image of the iceberg? You've seen this before, and we all know about an iceberg, that what is above the water is only a small part of the much vaster component that is underneath the water. What I'd like you to understand is that is representing you. You only see right now a little bit of part of what is above the water, but what God is doing in this process of becoming and growing and moving, God is beginning to lift more of you above the water, so you begin to see more and more, so that's who I am. You have a little bit of a sense of identity, but God is going to wind up just bringing your identity to the surface so you can see more and more who it is you are. And I like the word potential. That's the word I want to use, potential. I already mentioned, don't try to be somebody else, be yourself, but become the best version possible of you. That's what God's dreaming about, from conception to birth and the story, page after page, year after year. God is at work for you to become the best possible version of yourself. Potential, possibilities. The horizons are vast for who you are. And again, most of the time, we just see what's on the surface, and we are so clueless about all the much bigger potential that is down beneath. But God sees that potential so clearly. He's the one who put it there in the first place, and he's the one who's just lifting that potential higher and higher every single day. Years ago, I had the opportunity to connect with a person that I had not worked with for several years. And a number of years had gone by, and then we had another occasion to begin working together. And it was really exciting because I had grown so much, so many different dynamics were unfolding. I had become, in my sense, a pretty different person. And I was really with anticipation, looking forward to this person and saying all the new things that had grown and developed. And as we began working together for a little while, something began to dawn on me, like I'm hearing the same old ideas, the same old methodologies, and like it's almost like nothing really new and exciting and beautiful had developed in the years in between our working together. I was like just kind of disappointed. I'm thinking, gosh, I know what God was doing in my life, and I'm looking and we're talking and I'm probing, and there's just like there wasn't anything really new. It was a little bit of a sense of disappointing. Now, I'm just back from a 2-week trip to Latin America where I had the chance to work in a couple of different countries with leaders that I had actually spent years earlier training, and then a whole lot more people. And it's always kind of fun though when you do meet folks that you haven't met for a while and you start swapping stories and telling what's going on. And I tell you, person after person after person, it was so exciting. It was so darn exciting for me to see the new things that God was doing in their lives, the new ideas, the new things they were starting, the dreams they were having. It was like, my word, they were becoming such different people in the intervening years. There was one person in particular. Man, he has spent about a full decade, 10 years, just becoming this new person. It was just beautiful to see the potential that had been in him. And in fact, I had seen potential in him, but I tell you, I had no idea how much potential this guy had. And man, God was just lifting this potential from below the water and lifting it higher. And as I'm looking and thinking, man, I have no idea what this guy's limits are. I don't think he does either. I think, wow, the best is yet to come for that person. And that is so true for so many of us. The best is yet to come. The potential is below the water. God is just lifting it up higher and higher. And I want you to have great confidence about that. Now, Abraham Lincoln, I'm going to just shift a little bit here about potential. Abraham Lincoln had used a concept. He used a phrase, and he called it the better angels of our nature. The better angels of our nature. He used that at the very last part of his first presidential inaugural address. Now, I think you guys know that when Lincoln became president, there were already states that had seceded from the Union. There was already this great massive tension about state rights and the states' rights to continue to have slavery as a legal option in the Union. And Lincoln did not want slavery to exist anywhere in the Union, so the states were seceding, and we were about to face an imminent civil war. And Lincoln, in this first presidential address to such divided people, were just pleading that we would wind up moving into the better angels of our nature. He just had such hope and longing for the better angels of our nature to prevail. And as we all know, those better angels did not prevail. The darker angels did of our nature. And so we moved into the costliest by terms of human casualty war that America has ever fought. And in fact, we lost more people due to the darker angels of our nature in that one war called the Civil War than you put all the other wars America has ever fought and put them together. And we lost more people in the Civil War because the darker angels of our nature prevailed. But Lincoln was on to something. He was on this fact that there are better angels. There's something better about us. And yes, we got some junk. And yes, we have some darkness. And yes, there's, it's the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde dynamic we all know. You remember that book. Dr. Jekyll's the brilliant scientist by day, and he is the hideous monster by night. And we all have a little bit of Jekyll and Hyde in us. But what God is seeing is God is seeing the beautiful, the good, the what is worthy, just emerging higher and higher. And so God is at work for the better angels of our nature to emerge, and He's at work doing that. Let me give you one more word about potential, and then I'm going to move on to this final thing called working. But here's one more thing about becoming and potential. I confession, I really do like America's Got Talent. I just do. I even like Britain's Got Talent. Now, we have more talent than Britain, but I do like Britain's Got Talent. And I like Australia's Got Talent. And I like all those things. Now, y'all know what the gold buzzer is? You guys know the gold buzzer? You know what the gold buzzer is? So when all these contestants are having their first shot at advancing on, The gold buzzer, if a judge is so wowed and impressed, they can hit the gold buzzer, and when they hit the gold buzzer, that means the contestant immediately goes right to the finals. They don't have to go through all the intervening stages. So 2018, there was a woman named Courtney Hadwin, I believe her name was, and she came on, and she was, again, a little bit awkward and a little bit gangly, and everybody's like, okay, what's she going to do? And the next thing that happens is she just kills it. She just is magnificent. She puts on a show and a performance that at first people, like, their eyes are going open, and then they're being mesmerized, and the next thing you know, they're just applauding and standing and like, this is amazing. We just did not expect this from this Courtney. And as the judges are talking, the very first judge just winds up being so excited. He just said, you know what, just gold buzzer, gold buzzer. And she is beside herself, and all the gold stuff starts falling down. It was so much fun, so much fun. And then she goes off stage. You know how they go off stage? And back there's the host, the current host, and the host says, were you expecting to get the gold buzzer? Okay, what a dumb question. I mean, nobody expects to get the gold buzzer, but here's what was really interesting. She's just crying with joy, and she says, I thought I was going to get the red buzzer. Now, you guys know what the red buzzer is, right? You're done. X. X, 3 X's, and you're toast. You're no good. She thought she was going to get a red buzzer. And she went out there and performed anyway. She got the gold. Guys, look, we're all in this together. We've all had a lot of red buzzers, haven't we? Man, we've had so many people hitting the red buzzer about stuff we've done. We've had people hitting red buzzers on our hopes. We've had people hitting red buzzers on our dreams. We've had people hitting red buzzers on our best activities. And until you start getting a couple too many red buzzers, and what happens? Well, you stop disbelieving. You start thinking, well, maybe that potential I thought I had isn't there. Maybe that dream I was pursuing isn't going to be a possibility. So we stop dreaming, we stop believing, we start to withdraw, we start to shrink, we start to diminish, and we start to kind of settle for just the little piece above the surface that we've been living with. And even that gets a little bit scary. Here's what Christianity is all about. God comes along to all of you and I that we've just been getting red buzzered through life. And he comes along, and his hand is right there, and he just comes down. He's like, gold buzzer. For every one of us, gold buzzer. Now, why does God hit a gold buzzer for you? Well, for a whole bunch of reasons. One is because that's just what God does. He's a God of love. He's a God of grace. He's a God of mercy. He's a God of compassion. He knows our needs. And so he's just gold buzzer for Brian, gold buzzer for Mary, gold buzzer for all of us, gold buzzer for everybody who's up here, gold buzzer. And with that gold buzzer, what God says is with that gold buzzer, hey, listen, man, you're through to the finals. Now, we got a whole lot of good stuff we're going to do, but you're through to the finals. You're accepted. You're loved. You're amazing. Life is beautiful. And let's see how far I can take you. Man, I tell you, if there's something I want you to leave with today, I want you to leave knowing you got a gold buzzer from God. Gold buzzer. And he's taking you right to the finals, and he's going to do something amazing with your life. That leads me to the fourth and fifth big ideas. And I'm going to talk about them together because they're the head and tails of a coin. Big idea number 4, therefore, God is relentlessly developmental with your life. And big idea number 5, God wants you as well to be relentlessly developmental alongside of him with your life. Now let me dive into a couple scriptures for just a few moments. I already mentioned John chapter 5, verse 17. My Father is always at work, and Jesus says, I too right now, I'm working. I am relentlessly developmental in your life. Philippians chapter 1, verse 6, so relentlessly developmental, he's going to take you to a flourishing finish. Somewhere along the way, this thing called doing, this thing called acting, this thing called working, it's gotten a bit of a bad rap. Somewhere along the way, we just sort of think, well, I shouldn't have to work, I shouldn't have to act, I shouldn't have to do. Let me let God do all of that. Let me let God be relentlessly developmental. I'm just going to sit here and let God do his God thing in my life. And no, I mean, when we're reading what God is doing, it is amazing. But then here's what else we read. So Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 10, says, man, I got the gold buzzer. By the grace of God, I am what I am. God looked at Paul and said, gold buzzer. God should have looked at Paul and said, red buzzer, red buzzer, red buzzer. He looked at Paul and said, no, he gave him a gold buzzer. And Paul says, I am what I am by the grace of God. And his grace was not without effect. And what he's saying is his grace was powerful, was transformative, it was life-changing. My whole world changed because of God's sovereign activity in my life. And then Paul, though, goes on and says something really odd. And yet I worked harder than anybody else. But it wasn't me working, it was the grace of God working. Paul has like zero tension between the amazing grace and power of God at work vibrantly in his life. And Paul saying, man, that grace and power is enabling me to work really, really hard. God is relentlessly developmental. I can be relentlessly developmental. And he makes it even clearer in Philippians chapter 2, verse 12 and 13. Continue to work out your salvation. Now, let me pause there for a moment. Salvation, great term. We sometimes misunderstand it a little bit. But all it simply means is all of the beautiful, healing, forgiving, transforming work that God wants to do to make you a brand new person in that flourishing finish. Salvation just covers it all. Anything you can think of that is good, throw it into the word salvation. Anything that is beautiful, throw it into that word salvation. That's what God is doing. Paul says, now continue to work out with fear and trembling, reverence and awe, your salvation. Because why? Well, because God is at work in your life. God is already at work to will and to work according to his good pleasure. And so therefore you can wind up working cooperatively along with God. God's at work, so now you can work as well. Be relentlessly developmental, because that's exactly what God is doing, being relentlessly developmental in your life. Then in Colossians chapter 1, verse 10 in the Message translation, Paul says, as you learn more and more how God works, then you'll learn more and more how you can work as well. I mean, we take our cues for how God is working, and then we begin to just work right alongside of him in compassion. I mean, I could give you dozens and dozens of verses that talk about God at work and you at work, getting toward that flourishing finale that he has for you and I. Let me give you one illustration for how this works. Let me get a little more concrete. Let me use a word that I think we can all agree on that's a pretty good thing, and it's the word love, right? Can we all agree that love's a pretty good thing? So we do funerals at Living Word. Now, we don't like to call them funerals. That sounds a little bit morbid. And many years ago, we called them a memorial service, but we said, hey, we can do one better. So for a lot of years, we have been calling them celebration of life services, where we want to celebrate the life of the person that is no longer with us. Now, here's what I'd like to wager. I would like to wager that every one of us, we would like a few things said about us at that celebration of life. Women, wouldn't you love for people to say, man, she was just amazing in the way she could love people. Oh, man, you should have seen her love people that were difficult to love. You should have seen how generous, how forgiving, how compassionate. Oh, my word, she was so full of love. I mean, is there any woman here who would not want that said at your celebration of life service? Don't raise your hand. But if you don't want that said, you need to come up and have a talk with me, because you want that said about you at your celebration of life. Men, wouldn't you love it for people to say, wow, I am just blown away by his capacity to love relentlessly. Oh my word, the people that he loved in life and how they became so much better because of the depth of his love. I mean, guys, is there any guy here who doesn't want people to say that about us at the celebration of life? No. That's exactly what God wants for you. Why does God want that for you? Well, because God is love. And God is so much love that he loved the world that he gave his very best. He gave us Jesus. So God is love and Jesus is love. Jesus is so much love that he died for us even when we were his enemies. So God is love and Jesus is love. That's who God is. And then Jesus says, hey, by the way, I want you to become love. I want you to love God with all of your heart. I want you to love others. Oh, and by the way, I'd even like you to love your enemies, because that's exactly what God and I do. That's what we do. We love our enemies. We make great sacrifices for our enemies. So that's what it's all about, you and I becoming amazing people of love. How do you become a person of love? Okay. Along the way, there's been a few people I haven't loved very much. There's been a few people, none of them here, by the way, none of them here, who have been a little irritating, annoying, and they would make me angry, and I wouldn't like them very much. Okay, so here's what I learned over the years. If I don't choose to do something about those people that I am not feeling very kindly toward, nothing good ever happens. I don't feel very loving, so then I don't act very loving. Nothing good happens in that relationship. In fact, things usually go from bad to worse. And then here's what I discovered. What will happen if I decide to act in loving ways towards somebody toward whom I don't feel very loving? What might happen if I choose to just start to act lovingly? And then I discovered beautiful things happen. Wonderful things happen when I choose to be loving toward people that I don't feel very loving toward. And over the years, I have just thrown out the 30-day love challenge. I say, identify the person that you don't care for very much. Identify the person who is the irritant, the annoying person, maybe someone who's even been an enemy, and say, what would it look like for 30 days if I was not selfish, if I was not mean, if I did not retaliate, if I was not vindictive, and instead I just chose every time, say, well, how can I love that person? How can I serve that person? How can I be helpful? How can I make a difference? It's the 30-day love challenge. And when I tell people take the 30-day love challenge and just relentlessly be developmental about loving the person that you don't feel very loving toward, and then come back to me and tell me what has happened in that relationship and what has happened in your life, I hear nothing but good reports. You see, we don't become loving until we start to act in loving ways. And that's what this whole thing is about. You are right now something, you're to become so much more, and you'll become so much more by doing, working together with God, to do what God does in the way that God does, and you will wind up flourishing. Let me show you this iceberg illustration again. I love it. Man, God is just at work, just lifting more and more of you above the surface. He just wants to lift so much above. He wants you to see your full potential and begin to move into that.